Hi guys, I'm Paul Kirtley, and today in this video I would like to share with you my thoughts and my experiences with the Mora Garberg knife, which I've been using for about 18 months now as I record this video, give or take. I was asked by Mora to review it. They, at least their publicity company, sent this knife to me in 2016, around the time that this knife came out. I haven't been paid to do a review, but you know, just everything out in the open. They sent me this knife for free to use and to try. And as always with my full reviews, I don't just take something out of a box, take something out of the sheath and go, ooh, that looks nice, that looks like it's a good knife. You can't tell with equipment, particularly equipment that you're going to want to use in wild and remote places in the outdoors and you want to rely on. You can't tell by looking at it whether or not it's going to fulfill that duty. You can get a good idea, of course, but the only way you really get proper experience of using something like this is by using it. So initially I just started taking it on courses that I was running, so I wasn't, you know, a million miles away from home, and I also had access to other knives, so if there was any problem with this I could swap out and use it. But I quite quickly became happy with this on my belt. I've used a number of Moras over the years, everything from the very basic clippers through to the companion knives. The heavy duty companion is a firm favorite of mine as a very good value but robust day-to-day belt knife. What I like about this initially is that you get a leather sheath with it, and one of my bugbears, and it's not a big complaint, but one of my bugbears with normal Moras, you know, the classic clippers and companions, is the plastic sheath, and also just the rigidity of that connection between the sheath and your belt. I like a leather sheath. That's just one of my personal preferences. I'm not saying you should like it. I know some people like the plastic sheath. I know some people like Kydex. I get that. I'm not saying you must have a leather sheath. I like a leather sheath, so it was nice to see that this had a leather sheath. What I was unused to though was a leather sheath with a popper closer, and that took a little bit of getting used to for me. And I have to say, on some teaching courses I was quite tempted to slice that off, because having to unflap it and flap it all the time to get the knife in and out when I'm using it a lot, particularly when I'm teaching, when we're carving, when we're doing a lot of things out in the woods, I started to find that a little bit irritating. That said, on trips, I ultimately took this on a big wilderness canoe trip last year. I wasn't using it all the time, but I wanted it on my belt all the time, and I wanted it secure. I found the reassurance of it having it not only with a pretty decent firm closure in the firm grip in the sheath, but then having the press stud closure over the top on my belt while I was paddling all day. I was happy to have that security there, and then I was using the knife, you know, on and off in the evenings around camp and what have you, but also it was there on my belt should I need it. So I actually quite liked that closure, but I have to say when I was teaching I found it somewhat it got in the way. Now I've used this knife everything from, you know, making feather sticks, processing lots of cattail roots, so Tifa latifolia. On one course we were taking a lot of those plants out of a pond, and I was cutting the roots off, and it was covered in mud and grit and dirt, and it served that purpose really well. Now this is the stainless steel version. I know that Mora have got a carbon version coming out around about the time that I'm recording this video. This is the stainless version, and I have to say I was particularly interested in the fact that this was a stainless knife, because of some of the jobs that I do. Like I say, all those cattail roots, cutting them off, they're all wet, they're coming out of the pond. That was a job that I used them for. But also, as I say, I wanted a knife that I thought, okay, this would be good for a canoe trip, because as good as you are on canoe trips, sometimes you may well end up in the water, whether that's you capsize or maybe you just end up wading deeper than you expect to. You want a knife that is going to cope with getting wet, or at least being in a wet sheath. And as I say, I like a leather sheath, but the problem with a leather sheath sheath is that if it's wet and you've got a carbon steel knife in there, the knife automatically pretty much rusts. And so I like a stainless steel knife for wilderness canoe trips, and for that reason. And so this was attractive to me for that purpose. The other thing that attracted me to this was its full tang. Now, as you know, the clippers and even the robust, the heavy duty version of the companion knife, they're not full tang. They have a tab tang, and I have seen a number of normal companions, standard companions, break over the years. The heavy duty ones are more robust still, of course, but what attracted me to this was this has a full tang coming all the way through, not quite in the same way as your kind of classic woodlaw knife where you've got the scales on the outside and you've got a full width tang there. I have heard of one of these knives being broken in batoning. I had a conversation with a guy in the Netherlands at an event about a year ago, just over a year ago, and he said he had broken one of these batoning, and it had broken where there was on the tang there is a little sort of insert to do with the way that the knife is manufactured, and that was a point at the fracture started in the tang. In my experience, if the companions break, if the tang fractures, it's also in one of those little stress points that fracture starts. So that was interesting, but I haven't managed to break this. I haven't gone out of my way to break it. I've just used it in the way that I use a knife, and that includes batoning, and I've not had a problem with this knife so far. It's quite thick on the back. It comes with quite noticeable machine markings on the bevel. This has been sharpened so much now that I've got a nice flat, effectively a Scandi grind on this one here. It's been on everything from pocket stones through to bench stones, and I find it quite easy to sharpen. It's quite a nice silky smooth steel, both in terms of sharpening it and in terms of using it. You can get a good edge on it, and I found the edge retention to be good on this as well. It holds its edge quite nicely in terms of the quality of the steel. So I think overall the quality of the actual blade it seems pretty good. I find the handle a little bit plasticky. That said, it's got a good feel in the hand. Overall, the balance to me is quite nice. The swell in the palm is also comfortable for me. It's slightly rubbery, but also plasticky. It's not as grippy as the companion knives, but the knurling, the diamond shaping on there does give it some grip. I have found though, both in terms of using it for dirty jobs, as I say, like removing the roots from Tifa latifolia, as well as sharpening it on a water stone, that water with the fine grit gets into the patterning on the handle, and it's quite difficult to get it out. You'd have to get in there with an old toothbrush or a nail brush or something to clean it out if you really wanted to. So it does look a little bit dirty, even though I do look after my gear, but it's just the use of that knife. There's dirt in there from my hands and from using it and from sharpening it. But I don't have a huge complaint about that, to be honest with you, but some people might. But overall it feels good in the hand. It's comfortable to use, and you can get a good strong grip and get some good powerful cuts with it. So in terms of use, you know, compared to a lot of the Moras, it's a very similar size. It's about that palm width, which is a very good size for a general purpose belt knife or a bushcraft knife, if you want to call it that. That's very, very good. In terms of the back of the knife here, it's very square, which works very nicely with a fire steel, a ferro rod, if you like. What I found with the one that I got, now I don't know if this is true of all of them, it almost had a little, it had a burr on the back there. Now whether that was intentional or not, I'm not sure. But what I found was, as I was reinforcing cuts when I was doing some carving, particularly making pot hangers and beaks, notches and various small campcraft jobs that I was using this for as I was testing it out, I found as I was reinforcing and being careful with some of those cuts that that I was getting little slices on my thumb, and I'll pull up a photograph of that because I took some photos of that at the time. And at first I just became aware of my thumb being sore one morning. I was like, what have I done to my thumb? And then I realized I'd been using this knife quite a lot the day before for making various camp implements, including making some beaked notches for an adjustable pot hanger. And I figured it was my thumb on the back of the knife as I was controlling those cuts, that the burr was cutting my thumb, and that's what was going on. So what I actually did on this section of the back here, to where it starts to narrow down a little bit, what I did was I actually filed it off. I removed the burr there because I don't use that section of the blade on a ferro rod anyway. As many of you know, I tend to push off from the front of the blade. I've left the burr on the front here, but as a lot of you know, in terms of that technique that I use for pushing really big sparks off the end of a ferro rod, I use where the bevel comes up to the back anyway. You always get a nice square edge there, but suffice to say, you can get really good sparks off this very, very easily. A lot of people think that you can't get sparks off a non-carbon steel blade. The people say, oh no, you need stainless steel blades you can't make sparks with. That's not true. I've shown it before with my Falcon Even TK4 knife. I did a video on that last year, but there's absolutely no problem generating sparks with that reinforced thumb grip, pushing nice big sparks off the front of this. It's absolutely great for that job. The other thing that I noticed, because the tang goes all the way through the handle, and this also has a burr on it, that you can use that on your ferro steel as well. Yeah. And that allows you to push tons of sparks down onto material, which I think is quite an interesting additional use. If you struggle to use that technique, you've also got this technique as well, and you've got that strong grip. Just be careful about the point, of course, and what your keep your face away from it, but you're pushing it away. But yeah, you can push really big sparks using that pole section there as well, that pommel section, if you like. So no problem generating sparks with this knife using a ferro rod at all, and that's again something that I look for in a good wilderness knife. So I was using this knife over the course of 2016 and into 2017, and so I decided to take this knife with me on the Missinaibi canoe trip that I did in 2017 with clients, and this was my main knife. I didn't take a spare knife. I was confident enough with this knife by that stage to take this as my only belt knife. I did have a pocket knife. I did take my TK4 as well, which I normally take as a backup knife, but this was my main wilderness knife for that trip, and I used it for making feather sticks and for lighting fires and just general camp duties, and it served that purpose very well. And of course, with it being stainless steel, no issues with water either, or being around water. Now, that was a trip I didn't fall in the water, I didn't capsize. There was a bit of wading, of course, but I didn't have any concerns about this knife being on my belt for that trip, and it served its purpose very, very well. And I'll share a couple of photos. Here's one I took of a few bits of kit that I had with me. And there's another one here of it in situ on one of the wonderful camping spots that we had, shown quite nicely there. So I was very pleased with it. The sheath has held up well. It's starting to look a little bit used, as you can see. If I can get this camera to focus. No, doesn't want to focus. I think there's something nice about that. There's a kind of patina to it. It's looking worn in rather than worn out, if you like, and I think that's you know, that's quite nice. It's not a super top quality leather. It's not the quality of a leather that you get on a custom made sheath or with a custom knife. Typically, you know, if you're buying a custom bushcraft knife for multiples of the cost of this Garberg, you're going to get a better quality leather with it as well. But there's nothing wrong with this. It serves the purpose. It, you know, the riveting is all good, the stitching is good, it's riveted here, it's not going to split very easily there. The bottom has held up well to wear there, even though it's looking a little scuffed. I have no complaints really. It's a tough little unit that's held up well to a lot of use, lots of different use. In terms of carving, not bad at all. Feather sticks, it makes good feather sticks. It batons very nicely. It's a tough knife. Feather sticks are good once you get a good sharp edge on it and maintain a sharp edge on it, and it's got a good, nice, smooth action. It does run off a little bit quick towards the tip, as you always get with a knife that's got a bit more belly on it like that, whereas a typical Mora companion knife comes up to the tip a little bit more gradually, and therefore you get a more gradual cut. That said, in terms of having that belly, it's quite good for skinning, for example, but it's not so good for carving. It doesn't, you know, most carving jobs, spoons and whatnot, no problem at all. Making a netting needle, for example, starts to get a little bit difficult with this because you don't have that spear point on it like you have on a typical woodlaw type knife, that type of bushcraft knife, or on a Mora clipper, Mora companion, that type of knife that many people use. And so it's a little bit harder for some of those sort of internal jobs because of the depth of the blade and you don't have that spear shape. But overall, if you want to carve green implements around camp for pot hangers and pegs and all those sorts of things, absolutely fine. Carving spoons, absolutely fine. There's just a couple of jobs that are a little bit more wood carving specific that maybe you'd want something with a finer tip. But then again, of course, you can get a Mora wood carving knife if you want to do lots of that type of fine work, and they're inexpensive and they do the job absolutely wonderfully. So yeah, as a robust wilderness knife that's not too expensive, that holds up to water, that holds up to prolonged use, I have no complaints about this whatsoever. It works very, very well. I'll leave it to you as to whether or not you think it's worth the extra money over and above a heavy duty Mora, for example, a heavy duty companion. But I think it's definitely worth consideration if you want to step up from that very, very basic Mora, but don't want to spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds or hundreds of dollars on a handmade custom bushcraft knife, for example. There's definitely something to think about there. As I say, if you really, really want to do lots of wood carving though, you'd probably want to get a Mora wood carving knife to go along with it, because the lack of spear tip on this, the fact it's got more belly, makes it more suitable for some jobs but less suitable for those wood carving jobs. But overall, I really, really like it. And do beware the thumb on the back there. As I say, if you don't need a burr there, maybe remove it. Just gently file it with a metal file and you'll get rid of that quickly. But I really do like the fact you can create sparks from the back of it too. So overall, very, very happy with the Garberg. As I say, I was happy to the extent that I took it on a proper wilderness trip where I had to rely on this knife, and it served the purpose very, very well. So yeah, well done to Mora. A good addition to the range. Thank you for sending it to me. Thank you for allowing me to test it over a long period of time. Hope you found that useful. I hope you know, the bottom line is I've used this for nearly 2 years. I haven't broken it. I've kept it sharp. It's served me very, very well for all the general purpose bushcraft jobs that I do, apart from maybe some fine carving. So pretty good thumbs up for that, for the Garberg. So that brings me to the end of my thoughts on the Garberg. I appreciate your attention. Thank you for watching. Please like the video if you haven't done already, and please subscribe to my channel if you're not a subscriber. Then I will be able to share more thoughts on more aspects of outdoor life, outdoor equipment, as well as bushcraft in general with you going forward. So like, share, subscribe. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Take care and goodbye.